Okay, good morning. Welcome to this session of Sheleads in Tech, where we exist to showcase and spotlight the achievements of women in tech. Uh, Women in tech still occupy only 5% of leadership positions in the tech industries, according to PwC reports. And there are several factors behind these statistics, including women facing issues with imposter syndrome, a lack of investment in development opportunities for women to enable that step into leadership. And today I'm joined by an accomplished leader in her field, Chichi Eruchalu. She's the head of leadership development at Multiverse. Multiverse is an Edtech startup whose mission is to provide an alternative to university education and corporate training via professional apprenticeships. So thank you, Chichi, for joining us today. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation on scaling up leadership.
Thank you, Lydia. Really pleased to be here with you.
Thank you, Chichi. So to get started, would you mind telling us about you and your career journey to date?
Yeah, so like you said, I currently head of leadership development at Multiverse. I've been at Multiverse for 3.5 years. And in my time here, I have, prior to that, I was running the delivery team. So that was a team of around 200 people, delivering coaching to our apprentices. And I've kind of led different teams in Multiverse. And then prior to that, I had my own business where I was doing business coaching and strategy, working with founders and sort of SMEs, helping them to really grow and establish their brands and leveraging digital marketing to do that. And then I guess my career started fresh out of university. I did business finance and I thought I wanted to be an accountant. I kind of did my first couple of weeks at University of Durham, and accountancy was Monday mornings. And I was like, I don't really enjoy accounting. I enjoy business. I remember growing up, my dad had his own business and I would spend summers there and he'd be teaching and I'd be learning things. So I'd always been really interested with that. So I left university and joined a graduate scheme because that's what we did, and entered into sort of commercial banking at HSBC and spent kind of 10 years there doing sort of finance role. And then I moved into sort of a more people HR support role. So this was sort of looking at how to develop our management trainees and like the individuals in the region, and then moved down to head office where I was in the project management team. So it was at that point when I was looking at what was next for me, and I had worked on Apple Pay as a project, and I really enjoyed the marketing side, and I realized actually I enjoy business and I enjoy marketing. And that sort of then led me into sort of doing my own thing. So I've done lots of different things, and I feel like they've all really helped and equipped me to do the things I do today. And I think at the time you don't always realize it, but then Steve Jobs says when you look back, the dots all connect. So
yes, they do indeed. And I guess all of this led to your current position as head of leadership development at Multiverse. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my role, primary focus is to help equip and empower the leaders to basically operate at their best. Our business is very fast growing. When I joined, we were about 50 people. We're now 650 in a space of 3 years. And so the leadership layer is really, really critical for the success of the business. They're the ones who are managing the coaches, or managing the team members. And we all know that individuals often leave organizations because of their managers. We know that people are often dissatisfied with their jobs because of their managers. And so helping that layer to be really clear what it means to be a leader, to be equipped with the tools to lead well, but also doing that really quickly because they're ramping up quite quickly is really key. So I do that through, I do executive coaching, I do group coaching, I do training, I run onboarding programs, and I also run sort of accelerator programs. This is where we're looking at different levels in the organization who wants to sort of move to senior levels, and how do we kind of facilitate that and support them through that.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And I guess for you personally, what motivates you as a leader?
So what motivates me? I love developing others. I've always had this passion for seeing other people uncover the things that maybe unbeknownst to them are gifts and talents that they have, and then really helping them to hone in and grow them, helping you to identify what are your strengths and then help you to double down on what those are. So that's always been innately with me. And I you know, there's this thing, are leaders grown, or are you natural leader? If you talk to my parents, they would tell you that I'm a natural leader. I'm the first of six, so I've always naturally, that's a position I always naturally fall into, leading. But
Yeah.
I very much enjoy kind of, you know, motivating, carrying people along, coaching people when individuals have, you know, problems or concerns. I love to solve problems, and so a lot of the time when you're managing people, you're solving problems and you're helping them to find solutions to those problems. So it's something I just naturally enjoy, and it's sort of my happy place. So helping and developing others, I love it.
That is so good, because I think it was one of the things that was highlighted in the PwC report, that a lot of women tend to gravitate towards companies that have a shared sense of value. So for you, leadership and motivating, carrying people along is important for you. And I think that's now become what you do as your career, and indeed as head of leadership development. So I think that's really a good point to call out there. So in terms of that growth journey, you mentioned during your career overview that when you started at Multiverse, you were only around 50 people, but now the team has scaled up to around 650 people. And I believe that's across the globe, not just in the UK.
Yeah.
So how did that process of scaling up your leadership happen, from leading a team of 50 to now leading a much bigger team that is spread across the globe?
Yeah, so let me clarify. So when I joined as a coach. So I was part of, so the whole organization was 50 people, and maybe the coach team was around 20. And at that point, I wasn't managing. I was an IC, individual contributor. My role was to go and deliver training to apprentices. And so I did that for like 5-6 months. And then I was asked to manage other coaches in the team. And so that's when I sort of started managing within Multiverse. I had done management in HSBC before. So I was doing that. And then as the team grew, this is when the next opportunity came to sort of expand that management. And so there's two routes to growing your management. You can either be asked to kind of take on additional people. So, you know, you can look after this unit and this unit and this unit. So at the time I was looking after digital marketing as a program. Then I was asked to look after digital marketing, the data program, and the software engineering program. So 3 new programs. So then obviously your scope increases. So that's one way. And then another way is for you to still have those programs. So when I had those programs, and this is right at the beginning of the pandemic, we continue to hire into those programs. So then your sort of the scope is still the same, but the reach is bigger because the teams become bigger. So you're then finding that you're managing more people. You're still managing those 3 programs, but you're managing more people. And then the sort of the final growth step was then when I was promoted to manage all the programs at Multiverse. So we have 7/8 programs. So all the coaches, program leads, team leads, all the things in that was basically the remit of the role. So going back to that sort of analogy of increasing the scope got bigger, it kind of doubled. But the role then became bigger, because the role effectively, in the year that I did that role, the team doubled in size. So still the same programs, but more people, because we're hiring quite a lot of people. So on both sides, there's different adjustments needed, and there's different things you've got to do, because it just depends on the actual situation.
Yeah, and I know your growth happened as part of that wider business growth process, but were there any stages in the process that informed your own individual readiness to be able to take on those more people and as an extension, increase scope in the business? How did you know you were ready to do that, from starting off as a coach and then moving to, manager, and then eventually now head of leadership development?
So I think the second managerial position, where I went from running 1 program to 3, that was a kind of significant step, because you're becoming a manager of managers then. So no longer you're just managing the coaches, you're managing the people who run the teams to manage the coaches. And that was a significant change, because from a mindset perspective, you're now another step removed from those who are like at the front line. And I remember reflecting, and I don't have a background in data, so I'm sitting here thinking, like, I don't know data in the same way like the head of program knows data, but she is sort of reporting into me. I don't know software engineering, I don't code. I mean, I could do basic, but I don't, not to that extent. but I do know digital marketing. And so what you find at that point is that you're then realizing that the skills that you need is not actually the technical skills. You're being promoted or move into this role, or you're asked to do this role because of your leadership skills, because they know that you're a good people manager. And that's something I also noticed, that the more senior you get, you're actually being not tested, well, tested is the wrong word, but the role is to manage people. And so it's like, how effective are you at managing people? So I'd proven with the digital marketing program that yes, I could manage the team, and I could also manage the program and create great outcomes for that program. So the thing was like, okay, we have this new program, it's fairly new data, we want you to sort of do the same. And so it's like, okay. And that's when I had to be very mindful of recognizing that, okay, I don't know data, so this requires me to have very strong SMEs who I support and who support me, but focus and remind myself of why I'm in this role is to manage the structure, the people, and to drive that bit of the business forward. So that's the thing, we've had this conversation before about, how much technical ability do you want to take into that next role as a leader? Yeah. Having a level of understanding is important, because all the programs function the same. They just have, they're just a different topic, for example. So that was always there. And that credibility piece is really critical. But to know everything about data, no, I don't need to. I still don't know everything about the data programs. Yeah. So, when you're in meetings and discussing, I would always be like, can you explain this to me again? Can you simplify this again? And I actually feel that it makes you more of you're less complacent, because you ask better questions because you don't understand. So you're very much sort of, tell me more about this and explain this to me, and why are we doing that? So there's different avenues around that. So in terms of readiness, you're then looking to see, am I ready to expand my own reach and scope as a leader? Can I manage more people? Am I able to adjust the way I lead and manage? Because managing an individual is different to managing a manager who manages individuals.
Yeah, I guess from all you said is that significant shift from being an individual contributor to moving into a more strategic leader. That's also key here as well. But as you said that, the next question I was playing in my mind was around how that increased scope would have or impacted you. Maybe it didn't, but I just wanted to check, did that growth create any issues with burnout for you? Because burnout is one of the common themes alongside imposter syndrome with women in tech and entering leadership in general. So did you feel burned out because your responsibilities and the people you manage increased, or was it all just a level ramp up of activity that didn't impact you?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't impact me. I think you have to be very honest and recognize that when you start a new role anyway, there's a level of time needed to ramp up. But we went through that year when I was director, we went through an immense level of growth, and we were also sort of restructuring and figuring out how different things were working and all that sort of thing. And so I had to go through quite a fundamental mindset shift of sort of, this is my role now, and these are the new boundaries I need to put in place. And that was quite hard, if I'm quite honest. I went from sort of, people want to book a coffee chat with you to like, you need to go and talk to my assistant type thing. You go from being able to just say yes to things, well, actually you can't, because you don't have time, and you have to be in different things and different meetings. You're having to delegate more and trust your team more. And that's why it's so key to have the right people in the right roles in your team. Because if you don't, then you find yourself picking up their work, you find yourself trying to cover the gap, and then you're doing your job and somebody else's job. So yeah, I would say that it's a different mindset shift. When at director level, you have to be more laser focused on the things that are kind of forward thinking, the strategic direction of the business unit that you're managing. You're not necessarily going to be in the detail of the day-to-day in the same way, but you still need to know what's happening. So for me, I was learning, okay, how do I still know what's happening in the business without talking to every single coach? How do I make sure that key messages are being shared down? How do I make sure that we have a consistency across all the things that we're doing. And this is where like having, and I still have incredible mentors who have been there and done this, who I'll be like, okay, how do I do this? Or this is the problem I'm having. How do I fix this problem? Or, you know, I'm like, I listen to a podcast and it's talking about, you know, communication at scale. And I'm like, okay, how about I set up a forum for the coaches? So they're like 4 levels between me and them, but I have a representative from every program. We meet once a month, and that's my way of hearing from them how things are happening and what's going on, sort of thing. So yeah, you have to look after yourself. I talk about it all the time. To lead others well, you have to lead yourself well. And you know, for me, I went through moments where I didn't look after myself. Like the gym became my distant memory. You know, you become very busy, and the first year, so this obviously the year of being a director, we were sort of coming out of the pandemic. The previous year was when I had that other role managing those 3 programs. We were in the pandemic, so you know, you're homeschooling, you're running teams, you're hiring and recruiting. So I feel like in a way the pandemic was a bit of a blessing, because it was forced me to be very ruthless around, I don't have any time. I'm having to spend the mornings with my kids, and so when I come back in the afternoon, I can only focus on these things, and you have to kind of give that out to people. So yeah, to answer the question, you know, you have to recognize there's a change. And I say this to people all the time, you have to let go of some things in your old role, because it's very easy to carry on and carry forward some of the things from your old role, particularly if you're in the same organization. You have to have a clear line of like, okay, I'm no longer this role and I'm now this role. So what does that mean, and what needs to change? And that's really, really important. So yeah.
Oh, that's a good answer. Thank you very much. And in terms of developing that consistency of messages, because you're more, or well, further removed, if I can say, from the coaches and other people who directly deliver the outcomes you set out from your team, how do you ensure you have a consistent messaging and vision, so what you decide at your level doesn't get diluted and completely change when it gets to the person executing either the code or implementing a program?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I would say there's sort of different ways of approaching this. One, it goes back to, again, having the right people in the right roles. So those individuals who are like my leadership team, and then their leadership teams, again, right people in the right roles. It's about investing the time with those individuals. So I remember when I first came into that role, and one of my mentors was saying, like, your role now is to develop your immediate reports. You know, you need to kind of forget about those below, and not in a sort of mean way, but sort of like that's their job to then develop those guys. So if you spend your time developing your core team, then the trickle effect will come down. So it's investing in your core team. It's establishing, what does excellence mean for us as a team, and how do we ensure that is kind of consistent amongst all of us? Do we all understand what that means? You know, when you have a breakdown in messaging and things not being sort of Chinese whispers, and things don't land in the right way, there's always a breakdown somewhere in terms of somebody either not understanding why we're doing something, they've not been bought into why we're doing something, and so the message doesn't land well. So it's really focusing on those members, because it's like, that's how you do that. But equally as well, there's other things that I set up. So I recognize that, so in the structure, the layer, not 2 layers below me, which is our first line managers, I never engage with them, but actually they're quite a crucial link because they manage the coaches. So I was like, I need to have time with them. And so every week we had like what we call a pulse call, where all the leaders come together. So I knew like at least once a week they're getting a direct message from me, and at least once a week they can come back directly in terms of me. I also said, you know, we did the coach forum. I had office hours in terms of getting people to kind of have the opportunity to come and talk to me. But you as a leader, you set the direction. You set the direction. You take that time out to think, okay, we have the vision of the organization of where we're going Multiverse, but what does that mean for delivery, for example? And from there, you sort of setting the tone of what we want to do and making sure that everybody's aligned and agreed with that. And then everybody else's sort of ways of working comes from there. Because, you know, there's times in the past where everybody goes and sets off their own OKRs and does their own thing. But actually it's like, no, we have to start the top first. We all have to agree first what we're doing. And then you then all go and set your priorities based on like what our top end priorities are. So that's what's really key. So right people, really, really important. So and ensuring that, you know, there's the right cadence for communication, but also the space for them to express, do they understand, are they concerned, how do we alleviate that? I remember I have different people in the team who have different strengths and weaknesses, and one of the strengths of one of my team members was that she was always devil's advocate. She always would pose the question of like, well, what about this and what about that? And I would always message her after meetings and things like this, say thank you, because of the way you always ask those questions, you're always making sure that we don't forget things, and we're always making sure that we cover all bases, and I think that's really important.
Oh, that's really good. And did you face any challenges as you grew in your leadership capacity?
Yeah, I mean, we face challenges all the time. If you think we're growing at pace and scale, so you have a lot of new people in an organization. So this is why really being clear on like what we stand for, what we're doing, and the direction we're going in is really critical. Because as you get more and more people in, things can get diluted or they can become strengthened. So that is something that's really, really key. Hiring was a big priority, and again, hiring the right people. It always comes down to the people. If you hire the right people, then they will produce the best work. They will stay in the organization and contribute to what we're building. So, we spent a lot of last year training and focusing on how do we hire, how do we become great hiring managers. So as a manager, like one of your priorities is to be able to hire well. You need to be able to hire great people and know what that looks like. So we really doubled down on that as a challenge that we were looking to overcome, and that you see the fruits of the labor now when you're surrounded by great people, because we hired great people. I'd say other challenges is sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So if you've never done this before, you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes you have a lot of firsts, of like the first time you're seeing this or the first time you're doing this, and so having mentors is critical, because you can go and say, have you seen this before? What do I do in a situation? I remember working with an executive coach last year. One of the criteria for choosing her was that I wanted somebody who was a woman who had a family and had been in a very kind of senior role and managed big teams. And I was really particular about that, because I really wanted to be able to talk to somebody who had been there and is able to then give really kind of contextual advice, because they've been and seen things. So it's brilliant for then helping you not make mistakes, but also just quickly solve things, because you don't know what you don't know. So often, it's that lack of knowledge that causes challenges and problems. So just admitting like, I don't know stuff, and I'm always in this, we're always in learner mode. We're always learning. And so, I'm never going to be like, oh, don't talk to me about that because I know everything. No, that's never been my approach ever. So.
And did you experience any career defining mistakes in your journey, and how did you bounce back from that?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I mean, less so Multiverse, but I mean, there's something I shared on LinkedIn around earlier in my career, when I kind of sent very sensitive information to the whole region and had to then make lots of calls to trainees and management trainees around performance rate, while their performance ratings were now leaked to everybody in the region. So yeah, we all make mistakes, we all do things, and I think the key thing here, and we talk about this a lot, is creating an environment where people feel okay to fail, because if they're afraid to fail, they won't try things, they won't do things, and it actually really stifles creativity. And then you've got Simon Sinek talks about creating this circle of safety. You create this circle of safety for your teams, and they're not worried about, oh, if I do this, this will happen, or if I do this, I'm going to lose my job. And then they can then focus their energy on like doing really great work. So that's really, really important. Knowing that it's okay to fail. But then when you do fail, it's okay, well, what is the approach? What do I do? How do I manage that? And I think this is the defining moment, because we all will make a mistake or mistakes. It's whether do we own up to it? Do we then look to resolve it? Do we go make amends? And then do we not repeat it? That thing of you keep doing the same thing, that's then often a problem. So we all give grace for like mistakes 100%, because we all do it. I think it's when you kind of keep doing the same thing and the impact that it has can be sometimes far and wide. That's when it becomes a bit of a problem. So if you find yourself in that situation, no, it isn't the end of the world, although it might feel so in that moment, and work with your manager, who hopefully should be able to support you through that in a really positive way. and like what is the next steps, what do I do, how do I manage this, and then one day you look back at it and laugh, which I can do now because it's probably like 15 years ago or what have you, but it, you know, at the time it was horrific, but like now it's like, you know, I remember that manager dearly. He was so kind. So
because I guess the thing from mistakes and often career defining events is that tendency to want to stop taking on new territory and new challenges, and you'll say, well, you know, I made a mistake, I'm not going to do anymore, I'm not going to push myself any harder. I think for me personally, that would be one thing that would be a drawback, because people respond to these events quite differently. For some people, they might be able to move on quickly, and as you said, if you have a manager that makes it even worse when you're going through a bad situation, then it just gets even worse. So it's remembering not to stop, right, and just learn from those mistakes and move on.
And you know, recognize that you will knock your confidence. It's normal. And it's in those times where you have to separate fact from fiction. You know, you might make a mistake and then you like, they're thinking, oh, you know, they think I'm stupid now, they think I'm incompetent, and oh, I'm not going to do this again, I'm not going to put myself forward because what if it happens again? But just like falling off a bike or a horse or whatever analogy you want to use, you have to get back onto it, and you have to push past that sort of fear, because it will be a fear, and your ego will be bruised and all of that sort of thing, to sort of keep moving forward. Because you always have to ask yourself, like, what's the alternative? So I don't do things anymore, I don't push myself anymore, I don't take risks anymore, which is not an exciting life. And you know, who wants to be in that scenario? So often when coaching individuals and this sort of thing comes up, it's always playing out like, well, what if you do nothing then? You know, what if you decide to just stay in this state? Like, how does that work out for you? And letting them like, oh, okay, so my ego's bruised, you know, my confidence is low, how can I rebuild that? How can I build that trust within myself? And how can I, you know, get that quick win back, so that you can like remind yourself that, oh yeah, I am very capable, I just made a mistake, I can keep moving forward. So
excellent, Chichi. And just to close, what can leaders do to ensure that the development of people that are coming through the ranks in the business is on track to produce a sustainable high performance?
Big question. So I mean, at Multiverse, our leadership model is the 3 R's: recruitment, retention, and results. So we recruit A players, because we know you recruit the right people, then that's the first step in the game. Second piece about retention is about inspiring and developing people. So if you're constantly being inspired at work, you're brought into the mission, you're excited about where it's going, and you're being developed, so you're being challenged, you're given autonomy, all these different things, then you will stay in your organization. And so leaders need to remind themselves that being a manager is a very, how we put it now, it's a very privileged position. It's hard work, but it's a very privileged position. People often forget the role that they play in the lives of their reports. So if you think about it, you know, you go home and be like, oh, my manager said this, my manager did this, and and like your whole family, your auntie, knows all about your manager. So if you're a manager who's not great, they'll know about you, but not for you being great, and vice versa. So I always, you know, tell leaders, you know, got to lead yourself first. You've got to lead by example. You know, take care of the foundational things, but then get to know your people, get to know them. Why are they here? What motivates them? And really focus on developing them, keeping them inspired, keeping them excited about what they're doing. One of the reasons, you know, I enjoy kind of being at Multiverse is that inspiration piece has never died. You know, I'm always being developed because we're growing so fast and I'm learning new things all the time. But what we're doing is game changing and it's never been done before. So every day you're like, we're doing this amazing, incredible thing, and we're changing lives, and we're giving access to amazing jobs to all kind of people. And you're surrounded by people who are all aligned with that mission. So that in itself is amazing and exciting. So as a leader, always be asking yourself, okay, how can I be moving this individual forward? How can I be helping them fulfill the dream that they have in their lives? So it's not just about like right here and now. You know, they might want to buy a house, they might want to go and do something big. Like, how can I, in my relationship with them right now, support them with that, and be there with them? So
Oh, that was awesome, Chichi. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on scaling up in leadership. I really enjoyed listening to all the great points you made across the board, and there are lots of personal learnings to take away and implement on this session. So thank you so much for giving your time to Sheleads today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.